This is for the Maroons in the Blue Mountains of Jamaica. This is for all my Native American Moors of Turtle Island just minding their business in Canada until all this colonization bullshit.
Ronnie!
My bad, Auntie.
Chill, this is phenomenal.
Transition almost, because you said pipeline, and that brings me to my next question, and that what it seems to be hip-hop to prison, death, early pregnancy, a disease pipeline that we seem to see now in our current stage of hip-hop. This time last year, we were speaking on Kanye West and the effect that Kanye West had, speaking on the Jewish community, speaking on wealth, speaking on power. Fast forward a year, and we see hip-hop almost at its lowest point. When you look at the content, when you look at the imagery in female hip-hop, in drill rap, and male hip-hop, what is your overall thoughts on the current stage of hip-hop and its effect on our community in particular?
Go back 55 years. That's before before you guys were born.
Yes, sir.
See, what happened is Hollywood was going broke. They came up with this thing called color TV. So the major motion picture industry was going broke. Every Thursday and every Sunday, you had 2 new movies, 3 or 4 cartoons. Nobody gave a damn about how well people liked the movie. Every Thursday and Sunday, they changed. Well, color television was keeping a lot of people at home by then. It had become affordable in the late 60s. And they couldn't sustain that. Just think about it. Each studio was having to come up with a couple of 100 movies a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what they did is they started hiring young people fresh out of college. And they had the idea, look, we got a bright idea, a thought. There's this huge market of colored folk, black folk, Negroes, Afro-Americans, and they want to see themselves. Let's go to them and we can save our industry. Wow. And instead of 2 new movies every Thursday and Sunday, we just have 1, and it'll last, stay in the theaters as long as people will go. And instead of 50 cents for an adult admission, and you walk in anytime you wanted to, in the middle of a movie, saw what was going on, watched the sub features and the 2 or 3 or 4 cartoons, and then the second feature, and then you sit through the part of the feature that you missed, I'll stay all night. So they said, let's go to these Negroes. They want to see themselves. They're starving for a view of Negro, Afro-American, Black, whatever on the screen. And since we want to bring in the largest number, let's not talk about those Afro-Americans. We didn't say African-Americans, and Afro-Americans, Black folk then. Not the ones that are trying to be about something. Let's pick the pimps, hoes, drug dealers, robbers, thieves, murderers, drug dealers, etc., so we can appeal to the lowest common denominator and bring in the most amount of money. They started off with Black Caesar, starting Fred the Hammer Williams, who was playing the part of an assassin, drug kingpin who rides off into the sunrise smoking a big cigar. 18 months later, 20 months later, they followed up with Superfly, Rod O'Neal, pimped out, glorifying the sale of cocaine, which corresponded with the FBI making sure that cocaine got into the Black community. And we started glorifying dysfunction, the pimp, the hoe, the drug dealer, the etc., the fucked up folk became the things to emulate, and they made them exemplars of what you ought to be. I remember when Superfly came out, 1971 in LA, and I remember I was doing an intern thing in 1972 in Washington, D.C. Me and my roommate I'd gone to high school with, we drove around a theater that used to be on 14th and U, near 14th and U. And there was a line coming out of the theater. It went to the end of the short end of the block, down to the long side, down the long side, down the other short side, back up the long side, and then short side back into the theater. And people were standing out there for 2 or 3 hours to watch Superfly, which was a poisonous piece of bullshit. People had been wearing subdued dashikis, wearing afros, jeans, and combat boots and fatigue jackets, ready for the revolution. Then they started wearing platforms and bullshit pressed hair again, looking like something out of the early modern history museum wing of the Smithsonian Institution from 1950 something. And as Malcolm said, a processed head equals a processed mind, but they were sure doing it. Everything was pimped out, pimp your ride, pimp your persona, bullshit. It was dysfunctional. You got Pam Grier. She was beautiful, man. She was fine back then. But she started switching from playing these roles where her brother got murdered by the drug dealers, so she wanted revenge on the drug dealers. And if you saw the unedited versions, she got knocked down, knocked out 5 or 6, 7, 8 times per movie, and her pussy and tits would all show. And there would be 4 or 5 naked white women that somehow or another managed to get integrated into the scene. So they walked out naked, getting out the shower. And then it became from the brother got killed to the brother was a rival drug lord. So the woman wanted to take over from her brother as a drug queen. And then it got worse from there. So over 55 years, you got this pimped out mentality where the black folk became bitches to be put out on the street to be fucked by tricks and paid for it. And nowadays, hip hop is only the tip of the iceberg reflecting the sick reality behind what they've done. Instead of glorifying manhood, you glorify pimphood bullshit and other stuff. And nowadays we got it so it is unfashionable to deal with those who want to be counterfeit something else. Now, for most of my legal career, over a half century, counterfeiting was a crime. Now the government sponsors and approves counterfeiting when it comes to humans. Whether you are a boy counterfeiting as a girl, or, something else counterfeiting as something else, or an alien snuck across the border trying to counterfeit as somebody who is a native born or naturalized citizen. It doesn't make any difference. It's okay. Let's go deal with the bullshit. And we sit here and we go, oh man, well, and what is it with hip hop? Well, hip hop's embarrassing to me.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why. It's a stagnant music form. When I grew up, I listened to what my old folks listened to. And I knew that what they listened to and danced to, my grandparents couldn't handle. And I know what I listened to, my parents, let alone grandparents, couldn't listen to and couldn't handle. Hip hop's been in place for 40 years. So you have grandparents, parents, parents, or maybe even great grandparents in there in a club dancing to, listening to the same music. Just doesn't fit, stagnant. A certain ethnic group has been making a lot of money by pushing something. And the general theory, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And since it sells a lot, what you get is, let's keep up with hip hop that is 40 some years old, and let's not go into new music. Let's talk about gangster thug rap. But, you know, that's been going on for a long time. I remember years and years ago, going on 50 years ago, I went to a thing in Manhattan that came up, well, no, not Manhattan, Harlem. And they had a DJ review. And what the style was that the DJs would put on these block parties and they would talk shit. And they do the rap, you know, as they're spinning the records and they start scratching them, you know, and all of the rest of it, and go, yeah, man, it's down, you know, this is hip hop, Robert on, come into town, man, you know, it's all about the flow, you know, it ain't about the common Joe, it's all about the thing you got to deal with. You know, you got to be with the man on the wing, you know, you got to fly, you got to try. Yeah, and then they would have competitions, and that's when your rap started. And then later you got that ego rap that started up in the late 1970s. And that's been too long for a music genre to stay where it is, but for the fact that the Western world has been trying to destroy masculinity. So you have a group of young males who want to be men all over the planet, and they look at gangster hip hop rap video, and everybody's down with the half naked babes, and it looks like men are in charge, but it's not really that. What's going on is the females you see half naked, that's their great grandmamas, their grandmamas, their mamas, their favorite aunts, and friend girls are the same, playing bitch, hanging outside of the back stoop in the projects, half naked, trying to get fucked so they get knocked up and get a bigger check. It's sickness. And when I look at a gangster rap video, I don't see a bunch of men. I see a bunch of bitches that are trying to emulate their favorite arts with something in their psyches that got put there when they were 8 years old and their favorite 13-year-old aunt was talking about getting over. It's really kind of sick when you know what you're looking at. It's kind of like germs. Floor around here is waxed. Right. Got a housekeeper. She makes sure it stays waxed and clean. You drop something 500 years ago, 400 years ago on that floor, looks like this. People pick it right up and eat it. Right. But you see, I know that means there are germs down there, and you get your ass sick. You pick that shit up and eat it off the floor. But you see, now that I know what I know, when I look at some of the stuff that everybody's talking about, yeah, mine is down, do you know, DJ so-and-so, bullshit, motherfucker. He's sitting up there acting like a bitch. He's modeled himself on his goddamn whole aunt who was 13 with 2 children.
Damn.
Now, you think I'm lying about that? 1994 in my courtroom, I had a 57-year-old woman, female. She was her mama's second oldest child. She was born when her mama was 14.
Wow.
But the 57-year-old was in my courtroom. Also in my courtroom was her 43-year-old daughter, who was her second child.
Damn.
Born when she was 14.
Yeah.
The 43-year-old daughter, get this, had a 34-year-old daughter in my courtroom, born when she was 1 week shy of her 10th birthday.
Wow.
What in the world?
Oh.
The 34-year-old daughter in my courtroom had a 21-year-old daughter in my courtroom, born when she was 13. The 21-year-old in my courtroom had an 11-year-old girl pregnant with her second child.
No way.
Now, 16 months later, the 57-year-old fucked up and was back in front of me on a probation violation. She was now 59. The 21-year-old was now 23, and her 10-year-old daughter was now 13 with 3 children.
What?
So I was making the now 59-year-old come back every 2 weeks so I could eyeball a ball of defective ass. And 1 week she came in and she had 342 lineal descendants. Just 2 weeks later, she had 358. This was in 1996. Now, in 2000, the year I retired from doing the criminal court stuff, which was 2 years after that TV program started, I had a lot of leave I'd accumulated. This woman had 3,400 lineal descendants, and 120 of them were in my courtroom alone. 120 plus. One of her 29-year-old great-great-great-grandsons had, guess how many children? 63.
What?
About 58 different baby mamas.
Dang. Oof.
Out of this 3,400, we found exactly 2 that had ever graduated from high school. Those 2 got essentially kidnapped by their fathers and taken to Chicago, where they had a decent school system back then. And they were the only ones that we could find out of 3,400 plus we knew about who had had jobs. Now, you want to know what's funny? One of the guys that I'd gotten involved in the analysis was a PhD. And he used to work as an intern with this program where they take chimps and gorillas, female chimps and gorillas, raise them in human families and teach them sign language. And he had analyzed one of these idiots in my courtroom. Guy thought he was a gangster.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Doc, don't tell us yet, but are you familiar with Brother Davis? Excuse me, Dr. Davis? Yes, sir. What is that? What do we tease him about? Well, Your Honor, you're talking about the apes? Yes, sir. Well, he participated in these studies of these apes, chimps and gorillas, who were taught American Standard Sign Language. By the way, is that the same series of examinations that using English were given to the defendant in this cause sitting over here? Yes, sir. She said, oh my God, Judge, I just now put it together. I said, hold it a point. We talked about a few other things. He said, but Judge, I just have to add this. It's maturation. The apes were immature. they very seldom got past 8.2 years in human maturity. I said, look at page 11. So, well, the defendant's only 7.9 years in human maturity. I said, now you tell me what your conclusion is. He said, Your Honor, they got exhibits at the Memphis Zoo that are smarter than the defendant just here in the courtroom.
God damn.
I said, yeah. See, and when we last studied this woman, she had almost 96,000 lineal descendants, literally, in West Tennessee, and she was still alive.
Mm.
And all of them were fuck-ups. But see, nobody talks about that. And as a race of people, if we're going to get anywhere, we have to do something about it. See, primary problem with us is gotten back to this thing about glorifying dysfunction that I spoke on earlier.
Right.
Is you want to get rid of manhood. And for a long time in American history, the main way to get manhood out of the way is to have his mother teach him, the boy, he should not be a man and should be a good slave. Now, I know that because I spent many a long hour in DC working for this think tank, going over the microfilm recordations of what we call slave pamphlets. Man, eyes used to ache, back ache, like, man, I want to go home, get laid, man, get some nookie, man. Hell, it's bad, man. All these fine women that used to live in Chocolate City, DC. Man, hell, she's working for every goddamn brother, man. Goddamn. Ain't no more. It's Rainbow City now. It ain't Chocolate City.
Ooh,
What, 50 years ago, man, it was some, man, you got to believe it. And I'm sitting up in the library, I'm going, God damn, man, I'm looking through the readers and I'm going, man, damn. And see, I'm looking at what the slave masters were giving each other as advice on how to raise slaves for fun and profit. Kind of like the modern day infomercial. Once I was broke, down and out and borrowing money from relatives. Now I have a yacht and 3, Rolls Royce vehicles and 4 homes and this, that, and the other. Yeah, that's what they were talking about. And part of the process was getting the slave mother to raise her offspring as slaves. They equated the two situations. Well, not equated, but they said it's the same as raising horses. I had a fine ass movie star quality looking ex-wife, took me for a lot of money. It was fun.
right.
And we had a ranch and we were raising horses. And I know a lot of what I was reading in those slave pamphlets about the equation between black folk and horses was true. You cannot take a wild herd stallion and domesticate it, but you can.